Most Arkansas operators don't get into recovery housing because they're sophisticated grant managers. They get into it because they lived recovery, lost someone, or saw the gap up close and decided to do something. The grant world usually arrives later, when running a home on resident fees alone stops adding up and you start asking what other money is out there. So here's a practical guide: what actually exists, who's eligible, and the order that works. First, a distinction that trips people up. Funding for recovery housing splits into two very different things. Operator funding flows to your organization for operations, expansion, renovation, capacity. You're the grantee. Resident funding flows to or through the resident. Scholarships, fees, move-in costs. This video is about operator funding. The resident side, Parker Gill scholarships, the AARR Resident Support Program, that's a separate conversation. Let's walk the main sources. The biggest federal stream is the State Opioid Response Grant from SAMHSA. The money flows from the federal government to Arkansas's Department of Human Services, which administers it through subgrants. Most individual operators don't receive those dollars directly. They benefit from the certification infrastructure it funds and from any subgrant pools DHS opens. AARR itself runs on a state opioid response pass-through. The most accessible state source is the Arkansas Opioid Recovery Partnership, funded through Arkansas's $300 million share of the national opioid settlement and directed by Kirk Lane. They've funded renovations, new beds, operational support, and technical assistance, mostly through direct applications that often start with a conversation before you formally submit. Of all the funders, the Arkansas Opioid Recovery Partnership is the one most likely to say yes to a credible operator with a specific proposal, and certified operators are increasingly preferred. Then there's the Recovery Housing Program through HUD, a federal grant run through the state, one of the few HUD streams built specifically for recovery housing. It usually requires nonprofit status, certification, and a program design that meets HUD's transitional housing rules. It's bureaucratically demanding. First-timers usually benefit from a partner with HUD experience. ARPA dollars have also funded some transitional and recovery housing, though as that money sunsets, the direct opportunities are narrower than they were a couple of years ago. And philanthropy, the Parker Gill Foundation, the Arkansas Community Foundation, regional funders, operates with comparable rigor and is often paired with public money. Here's the realistic sequence for a new operator. First, stabilize on resident fees and modest donations. Don't chase grants you can't administer yet. Second, get certified. Most funding favors or requires it, and certification builds the documentation discipline funders expect. Third, build relationships with the Arkansas Opioid Recovery Partnership, DHS recovery staff, and AARR. Funders fund people they know. Fourth, start with smaller, simpler grants to build a track record. And fifth, layer in the larger federal opportunities once you have audit-ready accounting and a board that can oversee complex grants. Operators who skip steps either fail in the application or, worse, win a grant they can't manage and create compliance findings that haunt future funding. And be honest about the administrative weight people underestimate. Federal grant management means separate accounting for restricted funds, time and effort reporting for grant-funded staff, detailed documentation tied to allowable cost categories under the federal uniform guidance, regular financial and program reports, and a single audit once you spend more than $750,000 federal dollars in a year. A few things to avoid: applying for grants whose requirements exceed your capacity, treating grant money as discretionary income, it's restricted, ignoring sustainability, since most grants are time-limited, and a fully grant-funded operation is one cycle from collapse. And failing to document, because every federal dollar needs records that can survive an audit. The single most useful first step is a conversation with AARR. We track which funders are active, which operators have relationships with which programs, and which administrative gaps trip up first-time grantees. Technical assistance is part of why we exist. The full guide is linked below.